This is the Content Strategy Insights podcast, episode number 183. It's an unfortunate truism that content designers spend an inordinate amount of their professional energy helping their colleagues and stakeholders understand the full range of benefits that they bring to product and design work. Few content professionals are as persuasive and authoritative in this work as Gladys Diandoki. Her constant focus on strategy and her ability to reframe design problems in pragmatic, user-focused ways lifts up the whole profession.
Welcome to the Content Strategy Insights podcast, where accomplished content strategy experts share their wisdom with our friends in the content community. Our mission is to democratize content strategy, to make its principles and practices accessible to everyone. And now, here's your host, Larry Swanson.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode number 183 of the Content Strategy Insights podcast. I'm really delighted today to welcome to the show Gladys Diandoki. Gladys is an independent content designer based in Paris, working mostly with the French government now, but she's done a lot of other stuff as well. Welcome to the show, Gladys. Tell the folks a little bit more about what you're working on these days.
Hey, Larry. Well, thanks for having me in the podcast. So today, but like you just mentioned, I'm working with the French government since a few months now, and that's really fun, to be honest. And I'm also teaching in Les Gobelins, which is a famous design school, La Sorbonne as well. I'm teaching inclusion, content design. And with someone else, I'm also having a new class about accessibility for designers.
Nice. So that you're a real designer, but you come from, like many of us in this profession, from journalism. And I love how you talk about how that came to be, because I think as we talked before we went on the air, it became, I think, clear to me that like your sort of core competency is curiosity. And like you said something like, if I could just find a job where I can be paid to learn, that would be great. So tell me how that figures into your pathway into journalism and then maybe on into your UX writing and content design.
Yes, this is what I said once and more than once. And I'm happy we have found a position, a job where we can learn every day and go in the direction where we want to go if we are interested about a specific field in the design field. Yes, I did a communication school and journalism. I lived 2 years in Berkeley, not at UC Berkeley, but because when I moved in the US, I just wanted to improve my English and before going back home. But so I spent 2 years, so my major was journalism. And I was able to do a KQED training, so it's NPR in San Francisco, for a few months that I loved. And what I did, I was working on a show called Forum, which is the morning show at KQED. And I was preparing and doing the shows and doing everything you need to do, like find the guest, interview the guest, define with the producer who are the right people for the next show, for the next morning. So that was, really something I loved to do. When I came back in France, in fact, I started working, so I continued working for a few magazines, but I was mostly doing media relations also because I didn't want to be a freelancer at the time, freelancing in journalism. And so I did my work in media relations working for tech companies, which was super interesting. I worked for, Bose, HP, Google, many big firms, but also startups. And what I loved was to be able to work for all those different companies and sometimes do super interesting campaign that you will never imagine I will never imagine I could do. So I did that, but maybe the connection with what I'm doing today, because I really see a strong connection, is be able to frame the story in a way that will be appealing to the people you will be talking to. So for example, if I take both, for example, I could say some stories, like if we were having a new product with Le Monde or some publication, I will frame the story in a certain way, maybe more with business or trends, etc. When I was talking with a women magazine, most of the time it was more about the design and the way the product will be changing live. So I learned this muscle about framing a story according to who you're talking to. But another interesting thing I think I learned was to be able to test all the time. So when I was pitching a story to, before pitching a major media, I was testing my pitch to, I will not say minor, but a little bit less important media, sometimes some bloggers. But just to make sure that my pitch was strong enough. And so I really learned about putting my ego on the side, because when someone hang up on you and say, that's not interesting, that's not what I'm working about, you just learn to frame again, iterate, and improve. So a lot of things that I learned by doing media relations and also journalism, like asking right questions. But then that came UX in the way just via a client. They were working in HR, and that was one of the specialists was working with UX people, and I said, wow, that's interesting. And I see a lot of things that I'm already doing. It was not about content design, it was really about UX design, but I said, let's see. And I paid myself a few trainings on UX design, UX research, prototyping, and I just loved it. And this is when I started my journey in UX, in fact, without knowing what UX design or UX writing, or content design was at the time. But this is what the beginning of the journey that I started doing for myself to become a content designer without really knowing what content design was.
Yeah, and the way you tell your story, that's one of the most coherent stories of and because it makes sense that okay, it's all driven by research, and you were already doing UX-y kinds of things, like that move from test and learn, trying things out on smaller publications before you go to the bigger one, and the audience analysis stuff. And then to go from that, UX research and UX design and prototyping, and often that feels like a big leap to people. But in your case, it seems like a very logical progression. Is that how it felt in the moment? Or?
It felt like that for me, not for people outside of my field that maybe don't understand, but definitely for me, everything I'm doing is connected. But for example, I learn because when we do journalism, we do research, but that's not the same type of research that we are doing. So because we know what we are aiming for, what we are searching, and we will be framing questions in a way that will help us get our answer. I had to learn that no, I needed to take less place and learn neutrality and learn about bias and learn about what a question in research for a researcher is, instead of asking a question as a journalist where you put a lot of bias in the question, and because you have an aim, and that's completely different than what we do in UX. So definitely, everything was connected, but I had to learn what research really is in the UX field, but also learn about putting my content in a specific context, and which is now that I consider it's less limited than just the screen, because everything happens before, and this is when a content strategy comes into play. But when you start understanding the ecosystem within which you are working and how you are going to apply specific elements or methods to do the job. So yes, I had to learn how to prototype. I had to learn how to do design. But I was most learning about the techniques and methods than really the job about being a content person, because a lot of things I was doing.
Well, that's so interesting, because you're doing all this stuff, and it sounds like formulating a UX research question your experience as a producer at KQED, those are different but very analogous kinds of situations. And this all and many other things you mentioned came up. One thing that occurred to me as you're talking too, especially when you mentioned content strategy, you talked both in that like the producer role at KQED and the media relations stuff. You're developing a lot of like human-centric curiosity skills, as well as sort of diplomacy and what probably manifests, I'm going to guess, in your content strategy work as like stakeholder understanding and alignment kinds of stuff. You also mentioned like the ecosystem that you're operating in. Those are all sound very much like what we think as content strategy. Do you see content strategy as like how does it fit in your practice?
I think strategy is what when you have people coming to do copy and microcopy, that's definitely not the way I see my job. And we discussed about the analogy of the doctor I shared on LinkedIn. So maybe this is when I can use that, because this is what I told my student a few weeks ago. I told them, stop using the word wording, which means, in fact, it means nothing. Mostly it means you don't really know what you're looking at or what you're searching or what the problem is. And I used the analogy of the doctor, and I said, when you go to see a doctor because you don't feel well, you're not, yes, maybe you're going to say, I'm sick, but it's not going to be helpful for the people trying to find a remedy to your sickness or problem. And mostly, if you're not saying what you feel, we are going to have to ask you the question, okay, what's the problem? How do you feel? Where are you in pain? Where is it? Where is it located? What do you feel when I'm touching here? And the point is to say, you don't have to know the technical words, but you need to be able to explain what the problem is, what we are trying to face together, because this is when I'm going to be able to use the right tools to fix the problem. So if we take that back to, to a product team, if you're telling me we are struggling, we receive a lot of people to the support team for that specific issue, and we have that much goal, we would like to reduce that, I can come and I can say, oh, maybe, okay, maybe we can start working about the engagement. Maybe we need to, we will need to test that to understand that specific situation. So the more we can be precise about, at least, even if we, like I said, even if we don't know the technical terms, like it's information architecture or it's readability, even if you don't know that, the more you are able to understand the problem we are facing together, the better it's going to be, just to start being strategic and start finding the right approach to tackle the issue.
The way you just said that reminds me of how our work goes so much, like language is the expression of it and how we convey it, but it goes so much deeper, that it goes so deeply, so quickly. Like when you're talking to that doctor, like you don't understand the medical part and they don't understand your whole life, but you're somehow coming up with a description of concepts in a way that helps them diagnose and treat your problem. And the same thing in your work, you're feeling what their real pain is, what the right design solutions are to offer in the moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. But this is because, if you arrive and the screen, everything is already done, you can challenge everything, but you don't really understand what was the point. So the point is to arrive early and understand the issue and be able to say, okay, I think I understand the problem. But, I work for one of the French ministry, and someone came to me and said, oh, we have an issue. We want to create a chatbot because we have an issue with the intranet. And they said, okay, in fact, we have information all over the place. People spend a lot of time looking for information. We want to create a chatbot. And I said, interesting. But because what I'm hearing here is not a chatbot issue where you will have probably the same issue that you're having today. The issue may be to start researching about information architecture, the way, how the information is organized within your team, so who is in control of, how the information is put in the system, and how the research work, what are the people mechanism, what works, what doesn't work, but in terms of information architecture. And this is the research we have done, and we have seen so many issues, some of them easy to fix, but which require organization reframing, let's say. Other ones more complex, but at least we knew what was the problem. And the problem was not about creating another tool or a chatbot because it's cool, but really starting to structure the foundation. And if you are not listening, if you don't consider that taking the brief is the beginning of the research, in fact, you miss a huge part of the job. But this is also how you end up doing microcopy and not really understanding the problem, and how content is a massive key to fix problems.
Yeah, that's the perfect analogy you just gave of they see a problem like, oh, chatbot, that's the way to fix it. And you're the same thing, like, well, we kind of need to and your reframing skills just keep coming up over and over again. And it's also like the doctor, I have a number of friends who are doctors, and they're just sick and tired of people who do their internet research, come in and tell the doctor what they have so they can get the medication they think they need. And the doctor, like you, is good at reframing that, going, well, let's dig a little deeper and see what we got going on here, and treat the real underlying problem. I love the way you do this. But one of the things that I love even more is that you're so generous with this. Like, I think I almost at the start, I almost said, well, she needs no introduction, because you teach all the time, you wrote a book, you run a book club about stuff. You're really well known in the field. But that's because you seem compelled to connect with people and to share the stuff you've learned. Can you talk a little bit about that? Or
yes, but I work in the French market, and we don't have 10 years of practice. So yes, but maybe I can go back to the moment when I wrote the book, because I was doing the research for myself, because I like to understand, and I don't want to stay at the surface. I like to know the why and how we do things. And so when I did my training and I started doing projects, but I still had the feeling that I was missing things. I was doing the research about content design. I was reading all the books that were available, and it was not that many. So I see that the industry has changed a lot. But the point, I can be the one who knows a lot of things. If I'm the only one, what's the point? That's definitely my position. So writing that book was also a way to start explaining my industry, so French people mostly, because it's in French, French people and people speaking French, just to say, okay, this is what people having done this job for a while in the industry do the work right, and this is what we can learn. So I consider that we need to have an echo and spread the words and to make a change and stop being the people doing voice and tone, which is annoying. No, it's not voice and tone, which is annoying, but be focused. When people consider that this is the job, that's not the job. And when people, because they don't envision what you do, keep thinking that, oh yes, but I don't think I have enough work for you to do by yourself. Maybe you're also going to do localization, which is, I haven't done that. But so doing a book club or doing a talk, because I'm often invited in podcast or to do talk, even in Quebec at the end of last year. It was super interesting. Is also the point of open our mind, even us as content designer. So we are able to do things. We can manage teams and design team. It doesn't have to be content. And we see more and more people doing that. So open your perspective. And also thank you, because you said something that is super crucial to me. I have nothing, I don't feel bad when I'm called content or UX writer or writer, but you saying you are a designer, and this is where I want all the people doing content design, UX writing, or anything, or even the people we work with. I want them to see us as designer. We are doing the work. We are reading books about design. We are discussing. We have a lot of skills that we can put on the table that are design skills. And the more we will be seen as that, oh yes, the better it's going to be for us. But even if there is nothing bad with being content people, and I'm super proud of that. And we can change, and we see that we can change the world and the way we can change perspective and make people feel good in product, etc., which is great. But we are designer like any other designer, and we learn a lot and we bring a lot to the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you're saying that, I'm reminded of I can't remember if we talked about it before we went on the air or not, but we were talking about the brief. Like when you get a brief from somebody who's unfamiliar with your whole skill set, they're often just talking about either, I think the first example is like just put the words in here. But you just mentioned at a different level in this whole stack of things, it's like, oh, you're mostly concerned with voice and tone, but it goes so much deeper than that. It's like that. The fact that those surface level things are not the whole job. How have you, tell me, I know you must have success stories about helping people understand the full depth of your design skills that you bring. Can you talk about like maybe an incident where like an episode where somebody thought like, oh great, she's just going to fix our voice and tone, and you did a lot more?
Yes, but maybe I know with time we start reframing the way we explain our work or even the way we think. And I know you were part of the people I was having discussion with about knowledge graph or really technical things about the content field that for a while I was not ready. I mean, I was at the time where I needed to fix and be strong about certain things. And you know, so today, when I explain my job, what I explained, so today I say my job is to create informational system. And if you, when I went to Montreal a few months ago, I used the analogy of the metro, because we have a metro in Paris, but they have a metro in Montreal. And it was interesting to see that we are going to use, so we have different levels. You have what you see, but like I showed the sign, and I said, if I want to help someone go from that place to another place, I need to start framing the information in a certain way. So so you have the surface and what you see, but then if you start thinking about the system, you see that, okay, so now we need to think the sign as a system to make sure people are not getting lost in the metro in Paris, in Montreal, or anything else. But you also need to understand that there is other layers, because when I'm taking a brief, you are going to tell me what the problem is, maybe for our business. Then I'm going to do research, and I'm going to understand what the problem is, but also how people fix the problem or what they do, but just by listening to them. And I will be able to model the information and start finding like either patterns or things that can be interesting for us to fix the issue we're fixing. So it's a really deeper level, but which is super key to fix what we came to fix. And in the middle, in my perspective, we have information architecture, because how do we make that model possible and reachable to the people looking at the surface? We need to architecture things. And what I love is, for example, I explained to my student lately, I said, if we look at Instagram, because I did not work on Instagram, but we know that for a while, even Facebook, we had information structure in a chronological way. And I was upset when they changed it. And when they changed it, it was because they used AI. So because the technology evolved too, but also because when AI is learning about your behavior, we can then say, okay, they're looking a lot of that. I'm going to give them a lot of that. They're doing a lot of that. So, and this is when, it's not just how do I frame the screen or how do I display the information, but also what the aim. If I want people to spend more time on the product, maybe it's less interesting to show them the content in a certain order because it's not super impactful for business, but okay. But if we frame it this way, they may gonna spend more time. This is also why now we're having more of what maybe we have looked for, but also more videos because you're captivated by image that are moving more than by picture that are statics. So it's, they did that for AIM, but it's information architecture that and AI, but it's information architecture that help frame that. So and this is when, there are a lot of things we can say about information architecture and how strategic that could be. But when we understand that the structure is the key, then you can start digging deeper and deeper and being stronger with that, just to understand what you're doing and not just doing something because you're comfortable with what you know today.
Yeah, I just jotted down structure is the key. I love that as a content modeling nerd and information architect in many ways. But as you were talking about that, it's like, that's such a powerful way to connect everything together. Again, it keeps coming back to connections with you. But it seems like that information architecture layer, and it gives you like a toolkit. And as you were talking about like the social media feed, like at a place like like any of LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram or any of those, that like once you have it structured, you can serve any number of business intents, and you can do it in a way that promotes engagement. They're just like, as you were talking there, the whole field of modern design just came flying out for me. Have you had success in like once you've articulated the need for that structured, information architecture layer, do you find you're able to do more in different things with the design teams you're working with?
Oh, definitely. I love strategy. And my point is not just to come and fix your copy. My point is to come and fix your path and your UX. So the more we start understanding what is behind and the tools we have at our disposition, the better we start. I feel stronger. I feel more comfortable. I have real solutions. And also, when someone say, oh, I like it, I don't like it, blah, 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 I come with the background and I know exactly what I'm aiming for. So I can come with, my recommendation will be to use that, or we are going to test that. And then we can test, but I can also explain why this is a good point or one proposition that could be that could reach. And I can explain what goal I'm trying to reach, what methodology I'm using. Also, because most of the people, let's be honest, a lot of people say I'm doing information architecture, but when information architecture is not only about creating a path and putting buttons here and there in information. It's about also knowing why research is key and why I can use all the data from my research in my design. It's also about understanding the bottom up and the top down strategies. It's about, the more I started digging and reading and learning and doing trainings too, the more I said, yes, this is what we need more of when we are content designer or content strategist. And because we start, it's not about an advice, it's about methodologies that exist and that we can use just to explain. And we know how people are. When you come and say, oh, I think that this is best, that could be best, or there is this method that was used here and there and that we can apply for that and that reason because this is the aim. You have you're a little bit stronger in your position. Us, because we know that it's for a lot of women, and I know the industry is not only, there are not only women, but also non-binary people and a lot of people, but the stronger we get with knowledge, the better, the easiest my life is when I'm talking to people, because I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, not only that, you know what you're talking about. And I think a lot of us as practitioners get by with just heuristics about here's the best way to do it. But everything you do is research based, and you're coming to these meetings with the evidence and the research. I just love that. But hey, Gladys, I can't believe it. We're coming up close to time.
Already.
I know it always goes way too fast. I'm sorry. I can't control time. Before we wrap up, is there anything anything that you want to make sure we get to before we close?
Yeah, maybe one thing is just because of what you just said, research-based and testing. Like I said, the more we know about things, the easier it gets. And the more you know things, you also know that there is not only one way to do things, but several, and that needs to be tested and researched. And I really, really, really want for all of us, content people, but also any designer, to be stronger about research, because this is what makes a huge difference in addition to knowing the techniques, but this is what makes a huge difference. This is what makes us more strategic. And this is how also we, because, when you take a brief and you understand the issue and you start having the data, but you can also measure by testing, not by just having an advice on things. So I think this is, yes, with every layer we discuss, but being able to research content, but also all the other aspects, and being able to test is going to make us, and you will not do without us nowhere.
No, if that's the message that people take home from this conversation, just do your homework, do more research. I'll be super happy. Hey, one very last thing, Gladys. What's the best way for people to connect with you if they want to follow you online or connect?
I'm on LinkedIn. We have the Beyond the Cover book club if you're interested, so you can also meet. If you see an author who speaks English most of the time, you can join. And LinkedIn and Instagram if they want to.
Okay, great. I'll put all that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Gladys. I really enjoyed the conversation.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening. If you can think of a friend who might enjoy this episode, please share it with them. And please join us again for our next content strategy interview.